Okay, so I wanted to discuss the bite of 87. So, was it Foxy? Was it Fredbear? Was it Mangle? Who was it? That has been a topic of discussion ever since the very first game, and with enough evidence from all the games, we can definitely decide who it was. And immediately a bunch of people are going to say, it was Fredbear, we saw him do it in the game, except no, that is not. Uh, of course, there is the evidence from the television saying 83, and then there is also the obvious timeline that FNAF 4 took place before the other three. We can definitely say that the third game was an ending, and 1 took place after 2. So our entire timeline is 4, 2, 1, then 3. So we know for certain that the second game takes place in 1987 because of the check that we get at the end of the game after we beat Night 5. Is it Night 5? And 6? Night 5 and 6? Yeah. After Night 5 and 6, you get a check, and then it tells you the date, November something. Was it 12th? 22nd? I think there was a 2 in there. Point is, so the second game definitely took place in FNAF 2. What is English? The Bite of 87 was one of the FNAF 2 characters. But then there's people that argue that Fredbear and all, but that took place a couple years before. Like, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie, and perhaps the very first Fazbear crew. So then, like, where would the Wizards come from? Like, they can't get broken up overnight. Like, how do you have Faceless Bonnie and Handless Chica and all the broken down stuff from the Wizards overnight? Like, no, it had to have been a couple years before. I mean, of course, there are certain parts that had to have been cut away physically, like Bonnie's face, like you can see the cut marks. But then, what about other parts where, like what about, like, Foxy's ear and, like, the random rips on their legs and stuff? Like, that had to have been a bit more natural. Like, they sat decayed and the fabric cracked or something like that. So, I do believe that the fourth game did take place in 1983. Now, that's not the only evidence I have against Fredbear. In FNAF 1, Phone Guy tells you that the animatronics were allowed to walk around, but that was before the Bite of 87. In FNAF 2, Phone Guy tells you that the toy animatronics walk around. Now, if the Bite of 87 was Fredbear, and the animatronics weren't allowed to walk around on their own after so, then how would the toy animatronics be allowed to do that? Bam. So then, of course, there is, like, the rest of the evidence that points towards Mangle, which everyone probably already knows by now. So I'm gonna leave that there. Unless you guys want me to make a follow-up where I explain the rest of my thinkings of saying it's Mangle. But that's probably not gonna happen. I don't have an outro.